The first cow hit the frozen concrete so hard the sound cracked through the barn like a rifle shot. Then a second one went down. Workers froze in the aisle. Steam rose from the animals' backs. Snow screamed against the metal roof. And in the middle of it all, Helena Whitcomb turned on the black man standing near the open door. "You don't touch my herd," she snapped. "You came here begging for milk." Caleb Brooks stood there in a torn winter coat, one hand holding his 6-year-old son behind him, the boy clutching a blue toy milk truck with a broken wheel. Helena owned 10,000 acres. Caleb owned a dead van at the bottom of her driveway. But before sunrise, every veterinarian, ranch hand, and state official on that property would be saying his name with a different kind of respect. Because the man she called a beggar was about to become the only reason Whitcomb Ridge survived the night. And if you've ever had someone look at your clothes and decide your worth before you opened your mouth, this story is for you. Helena Whitcomb closed the door until the chain caught. 6 inches of warm light remained between Caleb and the inside of the ranch office. Behind him, the wind dragged snow across the yard in long white ropes. Down by the private road, his van sat crooked in the drift with one headlight dimming by the second. Noah was still inside, wrapped in the planet blanket, the blue toy milk truck pressed against his chest. Caleb did not move away from the door. "I'm not asking for charity," he said. "Your north line is freezing. I can hear the pump cycling wrong from here. Let me fix it. Give the boy something warm. Then we'll go." Helena's eyes flicked past him to the van. There was no concern in the look, only calculation. "This is private property," she said. "I have a crisis on my hands, and I do not have time for roadside stories." Another sound came from the dairy barn, low at first, then rising, a strained bellow that made one of the workers near the feed shed stop walking and look back over his shoulder. Caleb turned his head again. The sound did not belong to ordinary cold. He knew the difference. Healthy cattle complained. Sick cattle spoke from somewhere lower in the body. Helena unhooked the chain but did not open the door wider. She stepped out onto the small porch and pulled her coat tight. "What are you looking at?" "Your barn. I did not ask you to assess my barn." "No, Mum." The answer was calm enough to make her mouth tighten. A woman like Helena Whitcomb was used to men performing for her. Some rushed to please, some pushed back too loudly, hoping volume might count as strength. Caleb did neither. He stood in the snow with his tool bag hanging from one hand and watched the property like a man reading a page no one else knew had writing on it. That bothered her more than any argument would have. The office door opened wider behind Helena, and a man in a quilted vest appeared with a clipboard tucked under one arm. He was thin, gray at the temples, and trying hard not to look as worried as he was. "Mrs. Whitcomb," he said. The calf barn temperature dropped again. "We reset the breaker twice." Helena did not look away from Caleb, then reset it a third time. "It won't hold." "Find Ellis." Ellis took the feed truck to pull Jamie out of the lower gate. Helena's jaw worked once. Caleb looked toward the calf barn. A thin pipe ran along the outside wall beneath a poor strip of insulation. Ice had formed around one elbow joint, shining under the yard light like glass. "That steam trap is blocked," Caleb said. "Breaker's not your only problem." The man with the clipboard looked at him before he could stop himself. Helena caught it. "Graham," she said sharply. The man lowered his eyes to the clipboard. Caleb continued as if no one had reacted. "If pressure backs up in that line, you'll lose heat in the calf barn and maybe split the pipe. Depends how long it's been cycling." Helena gave him a flat stare. "And you know this because your van broke down?" "I know it because frozen pipe sounds different when the pump is fighting vapor instead of water." For a moment, Graham's face changed, not belief exactly, recognition. Helena saw that too. She stepped down from the porch, forcing Caleb to take one step back into the snow. She looked him over again, slower this time, as if a second inspection might produce a different man. "What is your name?" "Caleb Brooks." "Mr. Brooks, I own 800 head of dairy cattle, 4 barns, 2 milking parlors, and contracts that require delivery whether the sky is blue or falling. You are standing on my property in the middle of a storm with a dead vehicle and a story about a hungry child. So forgive me if I do not hand you access to my equipment because you made a lucky guess about a pipe." Caleb glanced toward the van. Noah's face was a small pale shape behind the fogged glass. Caleb's voice did not change. "Then don't hand me access. Have your man stand over me while I work." Graham lifted his head. Helena's eyes cut toward him, and he looked back down. "No," she said. A gust of wind slammed into the yard hard enough to make the porch light swing. From the calf barn came a sharp metallic bang, followed by darkness in one row of windows. Graham stepped off the porch. "That's the heat lamps." Helena turned. For the first time, something moved across her face that was not pride or irritation. It came and went quickly, but Caleb saw it. Fear, hidden under money and wool and family land. She hated that he saw it. "Graham, get the generator team," she said. "They're in the south shed with the tractor. Radio's cutting out." Caleb had already started walking toward the van. Helena called after him. "Where are you going?" "To get my son." I did not invite you inside. Caleb stopped and turned back. He stood under the swinging porch light, snow clinging to his eyebrows, one hand still around the strap of his tool bag. Noah comes with me or I don't touch the line. Helena stared at him. The wind filled the silence between them. Graham looked from Helena to Caleb, then toward the dark calf barn where young animals had begun making thin, nervous sounds from inside. Helena's gloves creaked as her fingers curled. Fine, she said. The boy can sit in the utility room. 10 minutes. You fix the heat line. Take a bottle of milk and get off my ranch as soon as the plow clears the road. Caleb nodded once. He walked back through the snow and opened the passenger door of the van. Noah blinked up at him, cheeks cold, lashes wet from the wind that rushed in. Did they say yes? Noah asked. Enough. Caleb lifted him out, blanket and all. Noah kept Milk Rocket tucked under his chin as Caleb carried him across the yard. When they passed Helena, the boy looked at her with the open caution children use around adults who have already failed some quiet test. Helena did not smile. Inside the utility room, the air was warmer but smelled of bleach, diesel, and damp work gloves. Graham brought a metal chair without being asked. Noah sat down, small boots not touching the floor, while Caleb knelt in front of him and pulled the blanket tighter around his shoulders. You stay right here, Caleb said. Noah nodded. Are you fixing the cow house? Trying to. Milk Rocket can help. Caleb looked at the toy truck. One back wheel wobbled with every movement. He's on standby. Noah gave the smallest smile. Caleb stood, picked up his tool bag, and followed Graham into the connecting corridor. As they passed a window looking into the main barn, Caleb slowed. A line of cows stood too tightly along the rail. Some had not touched their feed. One kept stretching her neck toward the water trough and then pulling back without drinking. Another shifted her weight from hoof to hoof, trembling through the flank. On the concrete near the far gate, the manure was too loose, too dark, and spread in patterns that told him the problem had not started tonight. Caleb's eyes moved to the water lines, then to the feed bins, then to the ventilation flap sealed shut against the storm. Graham noticed him looking. Pipes this way, he said. Caleb kept walking. But the ranch had already told him more than Helena intended. The frozen steam line was real. It was not the thing that was going to kill her herd, Fan 310. The steam line gave up exactly where Caleb said it would. He found the frozen blockage at the elbow joint outside the calf barn, under a strip of cheap insulation that had split open in the wind. Graham held the flashlight while Caleb worked on one knee in the snow, hands steady, breath white in the dark. When the pressure finally released, the pipe shuddered. A minute later, the heat lamps inside the calf barn flickered back on. Graham stared at the line. That was fast, he muttered. Caleb packed his tools. It was overdue. Helena arrived before he finished. She looked at the pipe, then at Graham, searching for another explanation. It's holding, she asked. For now, Graham said. Caleb stood. You need the whole run re-insulated before morning. Helena's eyes narrowed. I asked Graham. Caleb did not answer. He walked back toward the utility room. My son needs that milk. Inside, Noah sat wrapped in his blanket, holding his blue toy truck, Milk Rocket. Mabel Ortiz, an older ranch worker with silver hair and tired eyes, handed him a mug of warm milk. Noah took it with both hands. Thank you. Mabel smiled. You're welcome, honey. Helena appeared in the doorway. When the road clears, they leave. Before Caleb could respond, a young ranch hand burst in, covered in snow. Mrs. Whitcomb, it's Maple. She's down in barn 2. The room changed. Even Caleb could tell Maple mattered. Helena pushed past everyone and hurried into the storm. Barn 2 smelled wrong before Caleb crossed the threshold. Sour feed, wet bedding, something metallic near the water trough. Maple, a large Holstein with a brass ear tag, lay near the east rail, breathing too fast. Several cows nearby had pushed their feet aside. One kept stretching toward the trough, then pulling back. Caleb watched in silence. Then he said, Pull the east group off that feed. Shut off that trough. Helena turned on him. You fixed one pipe. Do not pretend you understand my herd. Caleb looked at the sick cow. I think your herd understands the problem. You just haven't been listening. The workers went quiet. At the barn entrance, Noah stood beside Mabel, clutching Milk Rocket under his blanket. Helena saw the boy watching and stiffened. Get them out of my barn, she said. Caleb looked at Noah's small face in the doorway. He said nothing, but his hand closed around the rag in his pocket until the fabric twisted tight. Caleb did not argue with Helena. He crossed the barn, took Noah gently by the shoulder, and guided him back toward the utility room. Mabel followed close behind, her mouth pressed into a hard line. Behind them, Helena's voice rose again. Get Maple up, call Warren again, and somebody check the south gate before we lose the whole night. The workers scattered. Noah looked up at Caleb as they stepped into the corridor. Is the cow going to die? Caleb stopped walking. He crouched in front of his son and pulled the blanket closer around his small body. Milk Rocket sat crooked in Noah's hands, the broken wheel clicking softly. I don't know yet, Caleb said. Noah swallowed. But you know something. Caleb looked at the boy's face, Rachel's eyes. his own chin. I know enough to be careful. In the utility room, Mabel poured more warm milk into Noah's mug without asking Helena. Then she turned to Caleb. You really think it's the water? Caleb glanced toward the barn window. I think it's more than one thing. Mabel's face tightened. I told her about that north trough 2 weeks ago. Smelled off after the freeze. Caleb looked at her. What did she do? Sent a hand to flush it. Said replacing lines in January was burning money. Caleb said nothing, but his eyes moved once toward the barns. A few minutes later, Helena entered the room. Snow clung to the shoulders of her coat. Her face was controlled again, but one glove had a smear of barn dirt across the palm. She saw Noah holding the mug. Mabel, I did not authorize more milk. Mabel stood straighter. That is not the point. Caleb rose slowly. Helena looked at him. You fixed the pipe. That was the agreement. As soon as the plow gets here, you and your boy leave. Caleb's voice stayed even. If you move those cows east, you'll lose more. Helena gave a small, sharp laugh. Enough. Noah flinched. Caleb's eyes shifted to his son, then back to Helena, she noticed. Instead of stopping, she stepped closer. Your father is not a ranch doctor, she said to Noah. He repairs sinks. That is useful work, but it does not make him important here. The room went still. Mabel looked down at the floor. Graham, standing in the doorway, did not move. Noah lowered his eyes to Milk Rocket. His thumb rubbed the broken wheel until it popped loose and fell onto the concrete. The tiny plastic piece rolled once and stopped beside Caleb's boot. Caleb bent down, picked it up, and placed it carefully in his coat pocket. Then he took Noah's mug, set it on the table, and zipped the boy's blanket higher. He still did not raise his voice. Come on, son. Helena folded her arms. Good. Caleb led Noah toward the door. But as they passed the barn window, another cow went down near the east rail. This time everyone saw it. The second cow fell harder than Maple. Her legs folded beneath her near the east rail, and her body struck the concrete with a dull, heavy sound. One worker jumped back. Another cursed under his breath. Helena stopped in the doorway. For the first time that night, nobody waited for her to speak. They looked at Caleb. He stood beside Noah, one hand on the boy's shoulder, the broken wheel of Milk Rocket still in his coat pocket. Helena saw the worker's eyes shift and snapped. Do not look at him, but the barn had already changed. Graham moved toward the trough. Maybe we should shut this line down until Dr. Pike gets here. Helena turned on him. Warren is 40 miles away in a whiteout. We cannot run this ranch on maybes. Caleb stepped forward one pace. No maybes. Shut the trough. Pull that feed. Separate every cow that drank from this side tonight. Helena's face tightened. And if you're wrong? Caleb looked at the cow, trembling on the floor. Then you lose 10 minutes. He looked back at her. If you're wrong, you lose the herd. The words spread through the barn without echo. Mabel crossed to the valve before Helena could stop her. Do not touch that, Helena said. Mabel's hand froze on the wheel. Caleb looked at Mabel, then at Graham. Nobody moved. Then Noah's small voice came from behind them. Dad doesn't guess. Helena's eyes cut toward him. Caleb turned slightly, but it was too late. Noah stood wrapped in his blanket, chin lifted. Milk Rocket clutched against his chest with one missing wheel. He fixes things, Noah said. He always fixes things. Helena walked toward the boy. Caleb moved first, not fast, not threatening, just enough to place his body between Helena and Noah. Helena stopped. Her mouth curved in something that was almost a smile. That must be comforting, she said. But grown-up problems require more than a child believing in his father. Noah's face changed, not crying, worse. He looked down as if the floor had become the safest place in the room. Caleb's hand lowered slowly to his son's shoulder. His thumb rubbed once over the blanket seam. Then Maple's body jerked near the rail. Graham turned pale. Mrs. Whitcomb. Helena looked back. The cow's breathing had become shallow and rapid. Foam gathered at the corner of her mouth. Caleb's voice cut through the barn low and clear. If you want her alive in 20 minutes, open the west holding pen now. No one moved. Then Mabel turned the valve. The metal wheel squealed. Water to the east trough stopped. Helena stared at her. Mabel did not apologize. Graham grabbed 2 workers and headed for the west pen. Caleb was already crossing to Maple, pulling gloves tighter over his hands. Helena followed him, furious. I did not give you permission. Caleb knelt beside the cow and placed 2 fingers near the jaw, watching the eyes, the flank, the mouth. You can fire me after she stands. I never hired you. Caleb looked at Maple, not Helena. Then you're getting a bargain. A few workers hid quick glances at each other. Noah watched from the doorway. Silent now, the toy truck held close. Caleb opened his tool bag and pulled out a clean length of tubing, a small flashlight, and a folded cloth. They were plumbing tools to anyone else. In his hands, they looked like something else. Helena noticed. So did Mabel. Outside, the storm hit the barn wall so hard the lights flickered. Inside, Caleb leaned closer to the sick cow and began working. By midnight, Whitcomb Ridge had stopped pretending this was routine. 3 cows were down. 2 more stood trembling near the rail, heads low, feet untouched beneath them. The east trough had been shut off. But the damage had already moved through the barn like a secret pass too late. Helena paced between the stalls with her phone pressed to her ear. "No, Warren, I do not need weather updates. I need you here." She listened, jaw tight, then she ended the call without saying goodbye. Graham stood near the main door, checking the white wall of snow outside. "Doctor, Pike says the highway's closed both ways." Helena shoved the phone into her coat pocket. "Then we handle it ourselves." Caleb was kneeling beside Maple, his sleeves pushed up, one hand resting near the cow's neck. He had asked for clean buckets, warm water, salt, baking soda, dry towels, and mineral mix. Not once had he explained more than necessary. Mabel brought what he asked for. Graham stopped questioning him after the first cow's breathing steadied. Helena did not. "You are improvising," she said. Caleb adjusted the towel beneath Maple's head. "No, then explain it." He looked up at her. "Not while I'm working." Helena's face went pale with offense. Before she could answer, a cough came from the utility room. Caleb froze. Noah sat on the bench under the yellow work light. Blanket around his shoulders, milk rocket in his lap. His cheeks had gone too flushed. His eyes were glassy from cold and exhaustion. Caleb stood immediately. He crossed to his son and placed the back of his hand against Noah's forehead. Too warm. Noah tried to sit straighter. "I'm okay." Caleb looked at the empty mug beside him, then at the thin blanket. Mabel stepped close. "There's a cot in the laundry room. Warmer there," Helena said. "That room is for staff." Mabel turned slowly. "So am I." No one spoke. Caleb lifted Noah without asking permission. The boy rested his head against his father's shoulder, one hand still gripping the toy truck. In the laundry room, Caleb laid him on the cot and tucked 2 folded coats over him. The room smelled of soap, wet denim, and old wood. Outside the small window, snow scraped the glass. Noah blinked up. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Are the cows scared?" Caleb brushed damp hair from his forehead. "They're uncomfortable. That means scared." Caleb's mouth moved, almost a smile, but not enough to hold. "Maybe." Noah's fingers opened around Milk Rocket. The truck lay on its side, missing one wheel. "Can you save them?" Caleb looked at the toy, then at his son. "I'm going to do what I can." When Noah finally drifted off, Caleb stayed beside the cot for a long minute. Then he reached into his coat pocket and took out the broken wheel. He turned it once between his fingers behind him. Mabel stood in the doorway. "You've done this before," she said softly. Caleb put the wheel back in his pocket. "I've seen bad nights." "That's not what I said." He picked up his tool bag. For the first time all night, he opened the side compartment. Inside were old gloves, a wrench roll, and a small black notebook wrapped in plastic. Its pages were crowded with dates, herd counts, water readings, symptoms, and markings no plumber would need. Mabel saw enough for her face to change. Caleb closed the notebook halfway. "Don't ask me yet." He walked back toward the barn. Behind him, Noah slept under 2 ranch coats, one hand still resting on Milk Rocket. Ahead of him, another cow began to stumble. Caleb returned to barn 2 with the black notebook tucked under his arm. The 4th cow had not fallen yet, but she was close. Her legs shook under her weight, her head hung low over the rail, and thin saliva swung from her mouth. Helena stood near the center aisle, arms crossed tight. "This is getting worse," she said. Caleb opened the notebook on a feed barrel. "It was worse before I got here." Her eyes sharpened. "Careful," he ignored that. "Mabel, I need every cow that drank from the east trough marked with red tape. Graham, pull the silage from this side and move it outside. Nobody feeds from that batch again." Graham looked at Helena. Helena said nothing. That was enough. The workers moved. Caleb walked the line slowly. He checked eyes, gums, breathing, flank movement. He smelled the feed, then the water residue at the trough. He scraped a little mineral buildup from the pipe with his knife and rubbed it between his gloved fingers. Mabel watched him. "You're not treating winter sickness." "No, what is it?" Contaminated water made them weak. Bad silage pushed them over. Cold sealed the room and made everything faster. Helena stepped closer. "You cannot know that." Caleb turned to the ventilation flaps bolted shut along the upper wall. "Who closed those?" Graham hesitated. "Mrs. Whitcomb ordered it, to keep heat in." Caleb looked at the damp ceiling, the stale air, the cattle packed too close. "You kept moisture in. Ammonia too." Helena's face flushed. "We were protecting the herd. You were protecting the heating bill." The words struck the barn clean. No one laughed, no one moved. Caleb pointed to the upper panels. "Open every 3rd flap on the west side only, not the east. Wind will cut through too hard." Graham waved 2 workers up the ladder. Caleb mixed warm water, salt, and minerals into measured buckets. He had the weakest cows lifted carefully onto dry bedding. He ordered space opened between animals. When one worker tried to rush a cow up, Caleb stopped him with one hand. "Slow, she needs balance, not panic." His voice stayed low, but people obeyed it. Helena watched her own barn respond to a man she had called a beggar. Outside, sirens faintly sounded through the storm. Graham looked toward the door. That might be Pike. Minutes later, Dr. Warren Pike entered covered in snow. Medical bag in hand, face red from the cold. He was older, heavyset, with sharp eyes that went first to the animals, then to Caleb's setup. He stopped. His gaze moved over the marked cows, the pulled feed, the open ventilation, the mineral solution. Then he looked at Caleb. Who told you to do all this? Caleb closed the notebook. Nobody. Dr. Pike stared at him a beat longer. What did you say your name was? Helena answered before Caleb could. Caleb Brooks, a plumber. Dr. Pike's expression changed, not fully, just enough. He looked at Caleb again, slower this time. Brooks, he said. Caleb held his eyes. The barn seemed to shrink around the name. Dr. Pike took one step closer. Did you work Nebraska in 18? Caleb's face did not move. Mabel looked between them. Helena's arms dropped slightly. Caleb said, a long time ago. Dr. Pike's voice lowered. Not that long. Dr. Warren Pike stood in the center aisle with snow melting off his coat. For several seconds, he did not check Maple. He did not open his bag. He looked at Caleb Brooks like a man trying to match a face to a name he had heard under very different circumstances. Helena noticed. What is this? She asked. Pike ignored her and stepped closer to the feed barrel where Caleb's notebook lay closed. You were with the Federal Livestock Response Team, Pike said. Caleb picked up the notebook and slid it into his coat. I used to be. Mabel's eyes widened. Graham stared at Caleb. Helena gave a tight laugh. That is ridiculous. Pike turned to her. No, Mrs. Whitcomb, it is not. The barn went quiet except for the cattle shifting in their bedding. Pike moved to Maple, checked her gums, eyes, breathing, then examined the second cow. He smelled the pulled silage, looked at the shutoff valve, and ran his flashlight along the east trough pipe. His face grew harder with every step. Finally, he stood. Everything he did was right. Helena's jaw set. You just got here. And he kept them alive until I did. No one spoke. Pike took out his phone, but the signal failed. He looked at Graham. Radio? In the office. They moved fast. Helena followed, her boots striking the corridor floor like she could still command the sound of the night. Caleb stayed behind long enough to check Maple's breathing once more, then glanced toward the laundry room. Noah was still asleep. Milk Rocket rested beside his hand. In the office, Pike used the ranch radio to call the county emergency line, then asked to be patched through to the state agriculture office. Helena stood beside the desk, pale with anger. This is unnecessary. Pike did not look at her. Possible contaminated water exposure, compromised feed storage, respiratory stress from sealed ventilation, multiple downed cattle. It is very necessary. Static cracked through the speaker. Then a woman's voice answered. This is Deputy Director Elaine Porter. Pike leaned toward the radio. Elaine, Warren Pike. I'm at Whitcomb Ridge. I need confirmation on a former federal response lead. Name Caleb Brooks. Silence. Then the woman's voice changed. Dr. Caleb Brooks? Helena's face shifted. Pike looked at her while he answered. Yes, another pause. Then Porter said, clear enough for everyone in the office to hear. If Dr. Brooks is on site, follow his containment instructions. He led the Nebraska winter outbreak response in 2018 and prevented a multi-county quarantine. Graham slowly looked at Caleb. Mabel covered her mouth with one hand. Helena said nothing. The radio continued. Do you have him there? Pike held the microphone out. Caleb did not take it right away. For a moment he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with snow or cold. Then he stepped forward. This is Brooks. Deputy Director Porter exhaled through static. Doctor, tell us what you need. Helena stared at him. The man she had sent to the equipment shed. The man she had mocked in front of his son. The man she called a plumber like the word was a locked door. Caleb took the microphone. His voice stayed low. I need this ranch treated as a controlled risk site until morning. No milk leaves the property. No feed from the east lot gets touched. I need water samples pulled before anyone flushes that line. Pike nodded once. Graham was already writing. Helena stepped forward. You cannot shut down my deliveries. Caleb looked at her. I just did. The words did not come loud. They did not need to. Outside, the storm kept beating against the windows. Inside, for the first time all night, nobody in Whitcomb Ridge was looking at Helena for permission. By 2 a.m, the storm had trapped everyone at Whitcomb Ridge in the same place with the truth. Maple was breathing better. The second cow had stopped trembling. The others stood separated in marked groups. Red tape on the east trough animals, yellow on the ones that had eaten from the bad silage batch. Graham and 2 workers carried sample jars from the water line while Dr. Pike documented every step. Caleb stood near the feed barrel, quiet, sleeves dirty, eyes moving from cow to cow. Helena stood alone by the office door. No one asked her what to do. That was what broke the shape of the night. Not shouting, not panic, just the silence where her authority used to be. A pair of headlights cut through the snow outside. Minutes later, Deputy Director Elaine Porter entered with 2 state agriculture officers, their coats white with ice. She removed one glove, shook Dr. Pike's hand, then crossed directly to Caleb. Dr. Brooks, she said. Caleb nodded once. Deputy Director. Behind them, Helena's face tightened. Porter looked around the barn. Walk me through it. Helena stepped forward quickly. Before we turn this into theater, my team has been managing a weather emergency under extreme conditions. Porter did not look at her. Doctor. Brooks, Caleb pointed to the east trough. Waterline cracked after the first freeze. Likely runoff contamination. Staff reported odor 2 weeks ago. Mabel's voice came from near the rail. I reported it twice. Everyone turned. Helena's eyes flashed. Mabel. The older woman did not lower her head this time. Twice, she repeated. And I logged it. Graham added quietly. I saw the log. Caleb continued, pointing toward the feed storage. Silage from the east lot spoiled after the tarp failed. It should have been discarded. Instead, it was mixed into tonight's feed. Porter looked at Helena. Is that accurate? Helena's mouth opened. No answer came. Dr. Pike held up his notes. His containment likely prevented full herd exposure. One of the state officers looked toward the milk tanks. Has any product left tonight? Caleb answered. No. I stopped delivery. Helena snapped. You had no legal authority to do that. Porter turned to her at last. He had professional authority. Now I'm giving it legal weight. The barn went dead quiet. Porter faced the workers. Whitcomb Ridge is under temporary hold pending testing. No milk leaves, no animals move. Records will be reviewed. Helena's posture collapsed by inches, too proud to fold, too exposed to stand the same way. Then Noah appeared in the corridor, wrapped in 2 oversized ranch coats, milk rocket in his hands. He had woken up and found the barn full of strangers saying his father's name like it mattered. Helena saw him. For the first time all night, she looked away first. Porter followed Caleb's eyes to the boy. That your son? Yes, Mom. Noah walked to Caleb and leaned against his leg. Porter's voice softened, but only slightly. Then he should know his father saved more than cattle tonight. Caleb rested one hand on Noah's shoulder. Helena stood across from them, surrounded by her land, her barns, her workers, her name on every gate. And still, there was nowhere left for her to hide. By sunrise, the snow had softened into silence. Whitcomb Ridge looked different in daylight. The barns were still standing. The milk trucks were still parked. The cattle were alive, separated, monitored, breathing steam into the pale morning air. But the ranch no longer belonged only to Helena's version of the story. Deputy Director Porter stood in the office with the final emergency order in her hand. Whitcomb Ridge will remain under temporary hold until all samples clear, she said. You'll face fines for ignored safety reports, improper feed handling, and delayed response. Helena sat behind the desk without touching it. Her name was carved into the brass plate outside. Her father's picture hung on the wall. None of it helped. Porter continued. You will also issue written acknowledgement to your staff regarding the reports you dismissed. Mabel stood near the door. Graham stood beside her. Helena looked at them both, then at Caleb. The words came out stiff. I was wrong. No one rescued her from how small it sounded. She swallowed and tried again. I was wrong to dismiss the warnings, and I was wrong in how I treated you and your son. Caleb held Noah's hand. He did not nod quickly. He did not smile to make the room comfortable. Noah leaned against his leg, milk rocket tucked under one arm, still missing its wheel. Helena opened a drawer and pulled out a checkbook. I can compensate you. Caleb looked at the checkbook, then back at her. No. Helena blinked. I said I would save your ranch for milk, he said. My son got his milk. Porter's mouth moved slightly, almost a smile. Caleb turned to her. But if the state needs someone to design a winter safety program for small dairy farms, I'll listen. Porter nodded. We can talk. A few hours later, the plow cleared the private road. Caleb's van had been pulled to the shop, warmed, patched, and coaxed back to life by one of the ranch hands. Before Caleb and Noah left, Mabel came out carrying a small metal tin. She crouched in front of Noah. Open it. Inside was a new wheel for milk rocket, cut from a scrap of polished blue metal and fitted with a tiny silver pin. Noah stared at it. You fixed him? Mabel smiled. Your daddy wasn't the only one working last night. Caleb knelt and pressed the wheel into place. Milk rocket rolled straight across the van's dashboard for the first time in months. Noah grinned, both hands around a warm bottle of milk Mabel had packed for the road. As they drove down from Whitcomb Ridge, the sun broke over the white fields behind them. Noah pushed Milk Rocket gently along the dashboard. Dad? Yeah, are we ranch doctors now? Caleb looked at the road ahead. Not exactly. Noah thought about that. But we help cows. Caleb's hand rested steady on the wheel. When we can. Behind them, Helena Whitcomb stood outside the barn while her workers cleaned, repaired, and wrote down problems she could no longer afford to ignore. Ahead of them, the road opened under the morning light, and Caleb Brooks drove on with his son beside him, still wearing the same torn coat, still behind the wheel of the same old van. Only now nobody on that ranch would ever mistake quiet for empty again. If this story reminded you of someone who was judged too quickly, share it with them. Sometimes the person standing outside in the cold is the one who knows how to save the whole house.